Things men will never tell women, but are very obvious. There's a lot of pros, but also a lot of cons if you expect the man to pay for your time at the beginning and if you decide to take him seriously. Primarily when the bag revolves around just seeing you, especially when the bag outweighs the effort and initiative. I hear a lot of, if he ain't offering X amount of dollars up front, I don't want him. And that's a sentiment that we commonly see for people that don't take other people that seriously, but we often see people fall through the cracks and get into a relationship out of it. Then all of a sudden they grow confused when he can only give what they demanded in the beginning. You can get a bag from a man immediately, but there's likely to be cons attached to it if you expect something from it. He will lead and continue to lead with what you throw at him. And he can get better at doing it or drop you. There's rarely ever an in-between. They will only know what you want from you in your first link-ups, and they will usually lead with what you expect for them to provide for you, and they're consistent to commit themselves to that role. If you expect what they depict as superficial love, then yeah, all it's ever going to teach him is that he can have you that way. Only that way of being bought, not if he provides emotional stability as well. To the point where even if he was a good guy, he's going to disassociate with that act little by little to become exactly what you wanted in the beginning. Or I should say how he would perceive what you want. And no, I'm not talking about paying for dinner. Men that lead with their finances and talk to women that expect them to lead with their finances usually view relationships as superficial and easily replaceable. Because you got to understand, he's not going to let himself or put himself in a position to potentially get used unless he was there for the ride. If he leads with superficial, it's more than likely you're sucking yourself into a superficial, meaningless relationship, where the substance from him only revolves around what he can do for you on the outside, where he's only to identify keeping you with frivolous factors that don't involve his feelings, emotions, or personality. He's the one attracting you and making advances, so he's also the one learning you. But just the important stuff that you choose to overshare. Not to mention the simple stuff like your patterns if you're consistently around him. You've given him the opportunity to save himself by saying the right shit to you if you begin to vocally put things together. And what I mean by vocally is that when people start to catch on to what he's doing and they get fed up with what he's doing, they tend to ask permission to engage in that conversation so he knows the content of what you're going to say. So if you ever had to sit him down in an attempt to get him more emotionally involved, he already knows what to say. That's his emergency cheat code and manual you're handing him. He knows you're upset, but he also knows how to bait you back in because of you, because the position that he's in usually makes people that are willing enough to date him vulnerable. Even when people don't realize they're displaying it, they're actually displaying it. So there's no such thing as he'll never figure out my game. He will. He adapts and he'll play along because he could afford to do so. If you're around long enough, he'll learn you, but it still doesn't change his first impression beliefs on how to keep you. Them first impressions solidify a lot for you. Once an image is already present in their mind, they rarely go back. Similar to the same thought process of why a lot of women can't redeem themselves if they do something bad to him. In their mind, they're like, I can't unsee what you did, so don't think I'm offering anything within the category of a relationship. He isn't going to switch up with his habit and just start genuinely caring about you because you said so. Because him leading by paying for your existence around him was the core foundation of what y'all bond was built upon. That's what he's been accustomed to doing up until this point with you. To take him off his usual route to ask for feelings now will feel like a task to him. Remember, he could afford to play, so it's not making a dent for him to actually care. He will continue to treat you how you expected him to lead because you have what he wants. Or how he chose to lead. Either way, you can't expect him to change overnight, especially if you coached him on how you wanted to be approached in the beginning. In many cases, their first approach is usually how they're going to continue to view you. And they're not too fond of change when they've already established a schedule around you by doing so. And them being natural analyzers subconsciously only amplifies that. And many of them know what they're getting into and prepare for it. See, not all people, but people tend to get caught up and distracted and forget to look for personality. Especially at the beginning, but when he has an abundance of access to external assets that you desire, it ain't hard for him to keep women occupied. And that's not me saying that all of them that have a bag are the same. Nah, because he can have an abundance of resources and still not lead with it. You just got to actually get to know where his values lie. Because the last thing on their radar, if they're looking for somebody serious, is somebody that's not looking for that. Because he's well aware of how men exercise their luxuries because it's likely that he's been around them or in their vicinity before. Many of them tend to be in similar spaces.